So I loaded up all of my boom boom sticks in the car and all the ammo, and I drove down to the building, locked the gate, put myself inside, and I stood on, we had an elevated deck overlooking the street. I just stood up there with a gun waiting.
Welcome to the Men Over Mountain Project. I'm your host, Dalton Yeatman, and here we band together to overcome life's most complicated mountains. Whether you are a father, husband, entrepreneur, or influencer, we find ways to take action and become a man over our mountains. Hey everybody, and welcome to the Men Over Mountain Project. I want to welcome a man that I have really gained a lot of respect for over the past couple months that we've been communicating through social media and really just kind of building a little bit more of a bond. We've noticed that we have really a very similar belief system, what we stand for, our vision, our goals for men's health and men's coaching. And so help me welcome Mr. Gabriel Alexander. How are you doing today, sir?
Thanks, Dalton. I appreciate you having me, man. I am doing incredible, and what a privilege to be a part of what you're building here. So thank you for having me.
Oh, no problem, man. I'm honored to have you on. Absolutely. So I wanted to give you an opportunity to take the floor and just tell me a little bit about yourself, kind of what your vision is, a little bit about your family, about your business, anything you want to share.
Oh man, I can go on for a while. I'll keep it short at the beginning and just kind of jump right into what I'm doing currently. Mm-hmm. I'm currently a men's life and business coach. I strictly work with men across the board. Although I have done a lot of things in the past, that's where my purpose is. It's where my mission is. It's where my future is. And it's part of how I want to impact the world. So at this point in life, I'm coaching men both one-on-one as well as a group. I actually have an application coming out on the iOS store and Android store. So I'll have my own app working with a larger group of guys in a group setting. But as I said, one-on-one, I'm working primarily with business owners and entrepreneurs, but I also work with people that have day jobs and want to create something different or want to increase their income or change their lives. In addition to that, I'm also speaking. So men's events, I travel to do that. And then of course, I've got a book coming out later this year. I've got a publisher I'm working with, and this will be my first release from a writing perspective. Awesome. So from a what I'm doing now perspective, that's what I'm doing with my time. Mm-hmm. I also own a company that I started a number of years ago that's in Washington State, a contracting company. And that kind of handles itself. And that's one of my sources of income. I also own some property down in Florida near the beach that we primarily do vacation rentals with. And then in addition to that, I've got some royalties that come in and live off of some things that I did in my music business days.
Okay.
And then, the last thing that I do is I also run a nonprofit here in the state of Texas that's currently being transitioned out of the Northwest.
Okay. That's incredible, man. Well, I know that there's a lot of, I guess, what do you call them? I call them Kairos moments, or like climactic moments in our life where we decide that, hey, we value this particular thing so much that we want to pursue it. We want to give it our time and give it our energy. I know that you said that you came from a music background and, have ties to Washington. You want to tell us a little bit about that experience and, what made you want to come back down to Texas?
Yeah. First and foremost, I was not born in the Northwest. The Northwest is a very unique animal and very different from probably where you and most of your listeners would be at this point in life. I was born in Nebraska. I lived all over the country. My dad was a minister for 35 years. So I lived in Nebraska, Missouri. I lived in Australia twice. I lived in outside of Houston as a kid for a couple of years, outside of LA for a while. And then I was in Washington State, moved there in 97. And my dad was leading a church there that he jumped into. Someone had wanted to pass it off to him after a number of years, and he took over there in 97. And so I was in Washington for 20 years. I had some very interesting experiences in the church that I've shared with you. We may talk about at some point. I have no idea what you got up your sleeve here. But, I went through a bit of that in my 20s, some rough things that happened in the church. And I'd been through some experiences that made me want to distance myself from it. And so I went just about as far as you could go. And so I decided with myself and my four brothers, we're going to jump into rock and roll. And we went into the music business hard. I was an artist manager and touring agent for 10 years. Did really well. I primarily worked with artists on their branding, their story, their messaging, helping them kind of build momentum and create a sound and do what they needed to do for an entire package. I had some artists that I worked with that were independent. I also had other artists that were on major labels. And when I got out of the music industry, it was actually just in 2019, and that's what threw me into what I'm doing now full time with Just Men. So along the 10 years that I was in business or in the music business, I was coaching people on business along the way. But it was more along the lines of strictly from a financial perspective, strictly from a branding perspective. And then in 2019, one of my clients was outed as a conservative in the Seattle music scene. He was publicly, branded as a racist online. And of course, that not only went with him, but the rest of us involved with the project as well. And within a short period of time, the artist that I had that was on radio and national tour they were quickly not with their label. And then, the radio play stopped, the touring stopped. We just basically got ejected from the music business in a number of ways. And just overnight, I realized that you really just can't cohabitate with the kind of ideology that typically goes along with a lot of the music business, entertainment industry in general. And then when the Rona was rolled out in 2020, and I know some of your listeners may disagree, I knew it was BS in the first 30 seconds. I mean, I heard the thing on TV and I was just like, I turned to my wife and I said, "You know what this is, don't you?" And she said, "Yeah." And, Washington State, I think a lot of people down south, especially where you're at now, where I'm at in Texas, they don't understand the culture of what it's like in those commie states.
Agreed.
And it's almost like they don't have their head wrapped around how big of a grip it feels like the state has around your throat in some instances. And being the way I am and the way my family is, a lot of people have a different line than we do. I'm a lot more extreme than most. My line was, I'm not putting anything on my face. And of course, that was the basic rule at the very beginning. The first thing everybody had to do. I refused to play along because I knew it was a lie, or at least I believed it was a lie. So I just refused to capitulate on any level and play along on any level. And when that happened, living in a place like that, people get in your face a lot. Everything was shut down. The weather isn't that great up there for being able to be outdoors. And so I was sitting there just going, this is crazy. I'm not going to live like this. And within the first week of mandates, I was already getting chucked out of stores and standing toe to toe with store managers. And so it wasn't going to be a good situation long term. And then the marches and the riots started. Yeah. And so, first it's the music business thing. And I never got a single phone call, single text, nothing from anybody in the music business to ask me how I was doing, to check in and say, I saw what happened, so all of the relationships I had, you think that going to a blue state is bad. Now join the music business and it gets that much worse.
Yeah. Any entertainment.
Any entertainment. And so not only had I first, really pissed off the church in some ways and left that, now I've gone and pissed off, the music business and all that goes with it. And I'm going like, man, I got nothing here. And then my businesses, everybody was telling us we had to shut down. I did not shut down. And luckily we were declared essential real quick, or the company that I ran up there. Anyway, I'm belaboring the point, so I'll get to it. But the riots and the marches started, and I had two buildings downtown in Tacoma, Washington, just south of Seattle. And one of the nights, some people had vandalized one of our buildings. We had spray paint everywhere, broken windows. Some genius had tried to light it on fire, but it's made out of cinder blocks that were painted. We had a little wood trim, but they couldn't light it on fire. And so I went up the hill the next day to our next building because I had heard that a march was going to be happening directly outside the doors. The epicenter was going to be right where this building was. We had just completed a major remodel on it. And inside, outside, gutted the whole thing, working with architects, all this stuff. And I just made up in my mind, I'm not going to let nothing happen to that building. So I loaded up all of my boom boom sticks in the car and all the ammo, and I drove down to the building, locked the gate, put myself inside, and I stood on, we have an elevated deck overlooking the street. And I just stood up there with a gun waiting. And, the march was going on, and luckily, at least it was daytime. It was during the light. Of course, that the dark is when it becomes an issue. So there wasn't anything physical going on during the day. But there was this moment when I was there, and we talked about it. You've been in a stadium at the 50-yard line or in a basketball gym or something, and somebody makes a big shot or somebody's running for a touchdown, and the intensity of the crowd as it's yelling. But the energy is much different when it's militant style chanting and people are very, very angry. Emotions are extremely high and people are looking for a reason to act out.
Demonic.
And yeah, it really is. I think that's part of it. It's not just anger. It's not just a militant cry. I mean, I work out 6 days a week with the men's boot camp outdoors, and there's something about that cadence, and everybody's cadence together gets that testosterone tingling, But this is different. These people are angry. And again, I think being down here in Texas now and being across the South for most of the last year, I talked to people about it. And with the awesome innocence of where I live now in North Texas, there's also a bit of naivety with it, where I think people are almost, they don't realize how dire the situation is, and that public schools are still churning these people out. People in Texas are sitting here going, all these people moving here from blue states going to turn the state. And I'm like, no, it ain't. It's you handing your kids over to the public school system. That's what's going to turn these out. That's my opinion on it. I think the public school system needs to be raised to the ground. I think if you can get your kids out, you need to get them out. I think if you don't have the means to get them out, you find a way to get them out. I do not believe there is any good in the school system. And I know that somebody's going to get, offended and write on my social media, well, my mom's a teacher, or we all know somebody who's a good person who's in the system.
Absolutely.
The system is there. People are abdicating responsibility for raising their children to a bunch of feminists and pink-haired pedophile lunatics.
Yes.
8 hours a day, 5 days a week. And they're expecting that to not affect the children. But anyway, so being down here, it has been, sorry for the rabbit trail, but
no, man, go ahead.
Eye-opening in that they almost don't recognize what's really going on. And I'm sitting here watching these people and the rage on their face, and understanding that if they got through those gates and it wasn't daylight and there weren't cops around, they would legitimately want to rip you limb from limb.
Yeah.
And I just, in that moment, also, one of the things I was not okay with was the general cultural response to what was going on in our state. Even the churches, I was really appalled by a lot of the churches. I mean, men in general in the Pacific Northwest are weak. Not a lot of masculine men. There are some, for sure, but even the guys that are more on the east side of the state, they've capitulated to this ideology that's going around. It's cops target black people, white people have privilege, white people shoot up stuff all the time, whatever the popular political narrative at the time is. A lot of the men go along with it. But I was really appalled by the church. I was appalled by the response to the racial stuff that was going on. I was really appalled with some of the excuses I saw out of people. Targets are burning down and being targeted, and the response of people online who are in leadership in churches are sitting here going, well, we don't know what it's like to be raised in oppression. And I'm going like, okay, like these are the type of people here.
Yeah.
It really was a dividing line in every relationship I can think of. People I respected for 20 years, I lost respect for them overnight.
Yeah.
Not only watching them bow and watching them be coerced with their jobs to get shot up with a juice they didn't know what was in it, to the black supremacy stuff, to wearing a mask and telling me what to do with my body, and meanwhile they won't call out abortion.
Right.
It's insane. So all of that was going on at the time. And anyway, so I was standing there in that building, and you could hear them chanting and yelling. And I called up my wife and I said, we're done here. We're not, I don't want to raise my kids here. My kids are not going to not get to speak out on something just because of the color of their skin. I don't want them around this culture. And for me, I'm not even so much worried about the people around me. I can protect my kids.
Yeah.
The issue is that those other kids that are watching this and participating in this, and it's the majority of the culture there, those kids are going to grow up. And it's already getting bad.
Yeah.
Drugs are essentially legal in the state. The only people who get taxed by the law are people who do something egregious and get caught, or tax-paying citizens. You walk outside of a steakhouse and there's a tent in front of you, quite literally, and poop on the sidewalk. And you can't believe it. I mean, there's drugs everywhere. It's encampments along every road. It's absolutely out of control. They won't enforce the law. And so anyway, I called up my wife. I said, we're leaving. And she said, I'm with you. What are we doing? I said, we're bailing as fast as we can. I hung up the phone. She said, I'm with you. Let's do it. I called up the brother underneath me. I got 4 younger brothers. So I called brother number 2. And I said, this is what we're doing. He said, well, we're with you. And he was it wasn't even serious on his part. It was like this rejoicing. He was like, dude, awesome. I'm in.
It doesn't take a lot of convincing. He felt the pain too.
He had wanted to leave for years, and he had tried to talk me into leaving for years. I almost left the state a couple of times in the past. And I would say that I probably overstayed. And I honestly think that everything that happened, God allowed to happen to wake me up and snap me out of it in many ways.
Agreed.
And I'll finish my story before I get there. But
yeah, go ahead.
My brother, his pregnant wife, and their 2-year-old daughter sold everything they had. We sold everything we had. We sold our home on a showing to the neighbor of a family on a handshake in the back field. We owned part of an old 1900 dairy farm. And, it was hard to get into the neighborhood. So all I did was send a text out to all my neighbors, said, if you got any family who wants to get in, let me know. Somebody's family came over. I showed them the house for an hour. We shook hands in the field and it was done. I think we sold the house in like 7 days, something like that, 7 or 10 days total from deciding we were leaving to the handshake. And I actually asked like 70 grand more than my real estate agent told me to ask, and I got it, which was really cool too. We sold every belonging we had in this world out of our driveway between OfferUp and garage sale signs over the course of 3 weeks. Packed up our stuff after I bought a truck and a travel trailer. We just went ahead and bought it off the lot, and because we didn't know where things were going to go, we were thinking if the doo-doo really hits the fan and stuff shuts down, we got a brand new truck and a brand new trailer and nowhere to send money. So we'll go ahead and get the new one,
Right.
And it was our home, so we wouldn't have a mortgage payment. And so we sold our home and everything we owned, and we left the state of Washington in under 5 weeks.
Wow.
And the company I handed over to a CEO.
Everything fell into place.
Yeah, we still didn't know where we were headed. We weren't headed to Texas. We decided we're going to look all over the country. And not only that, but I think there was this thing in our hearts of, while everybody's going to respond to this in fear and with a lack of decision making, we're going to make it the brightest year of our lives, and we're going to give our future they'll never forget. And there were a lot of people that said we were crazy, but I often find that the same people who say you're crazy are operating in a lot of poor mentalities throughout their life. If you really, really, really want to make something happen, you can.
Right.
It just takes you being put in a position where your uncomfortability level exceeds your fear of moving or your existing comfort level.
Exactly.
But it's all fear related, whether it be, well, I couldn't afford it. And yeah, there are some practicals there. But the reality is, if you want to make a change, and I would encourage anybody who ever gets an opportunity, leaving your hometown is such a hack for life as a dude, to be able to have a reset. And I can't imagine what would have made me move like that. And what's really crazy, I know I'm jumping all over the place, but it was a crazy time in life.
Yeah.
So, in under 5 weeks, we did it. So the funny thing is that the day before they rolled out the Rona on the news, I think right before they initiated the first sort of lockdown situation, I had signed a contract with a high performance coach, like a results coach, to help change my life.
Wow.
I've been into personal development since, I don't know, a couple of years before that. I had really started reading books and investing in myself. And I was blessed enough to have parents who invested in me a lot when I was young. And so I've had a lot of head start and foot and step up on where a lot of people would start, because my parents invested very heavily in me. And so there were a lot of good principles inside me, but I had hit my 30s. I had kind of reached that point where I know my dad's going to probably listen to this, but no offense, Pops, but I felt like I had reached that point where my dad had told me what he was going to tell me. And I really think that that's probably the goal. I would hope my kid moves beyond me. I would hope that you would want your kid to move beyond you. And I know my father would say the same.
Absolutely.
So he's not going to be, hurt by that. But I kind of reached that point where everything my dad's going to teach me, he's taught me. And I feel like I moved beyond. And even if my dad could continue to teach me things, he's not going to be able to teach me in some areas. There's always going to be something he doesn't know that someone else knows better. You can't give yourself to everything.
It requires experience to really take that education and learning that you get to turn it into wisdom instead of just knowledge. And I think that that's a lot of times where the barrier is, well, I can't really express the value of what I've learned because it requires an experience for you to be able to lock it in, because unless you tie what you know to what you value, you can't apply it in life when it's necessary through wisdom. You know what I mean? So that's something that I believe. And you mentioned earlier that, that whole life hack about moving away from home and stuff.
Yeah.
Man, I did too. And I'll tell you what, and I don't want to take you off track or anything, but it's just interesting. Like when I graduated high school, my aunt had given me an opportunity just to come move in with them and get a job, like probably 300 miles away from home. Right.
Yeah.
And so I got the job. I was working. It was a great start job right out of high school. I got injured within my first 3 months. And then I didn't tell HR because I had always had a work ethic that said, you're going to finish your day. And it was so fast paced that I was like, whatever, I'm going to get it done. I'm not going to bother anybody. And then we'll see what happens at the end of the day. Well, my leg had swollen up the size of a watermelon, it felt like. And so I called in the next day and I was fired for getting hurt because I didn't talk to HR. But so I learned that lesson. But then my cousin who I lived with, he said, hey, I'm going to college. What are you going to do? And I was like, I guess I'll go to college. And so went to college, got in a dorm, was in the middle of telling a guy in my first class, first day of college, because he had asked me, he's like, hey man, you got a girlfriend or anything? And I know a bunch of girls and stuff. And I was like, look, dude, I made it out of high school on a prayer and I'm just trying to get my stuff and get out of here. I come from a very small town, all this other stuff. Right. Anyway, my wife walks in the room and I watch her. I just follow her with my eyes all the way back to her seat. First day of college, being out of my hometown. Right. And anyway, she turned me down 3 times and that's why I married her. But I just wanted to plug that real quick before I forgot it, because I'm just, if you can make it out, get out, man. Definitely sometimes not having that support system you've always had kind of puts pressure on you to take it up a notch. You know what I mean? Because you don't have people to fall back on, anything like that. You're either going to make it work or you're going to have to go back home.
No, absolutely. And it's interesting that that's kind of where it ended up, in that my family ended up scattered. It was when we were up there, my wife and I and our family tend to be a bit of a relational anchor, I think, for other people. We're very social, very relational. We care about people. We love having people in our home. And we just tend to fall into a role where we just tend to lead others and gather people. And so when we left, everybody else in our lives left too. It was pretty wild. They all kind of, what's next? What's left? And they kind of all went their separate directions. But,
right.
All of this was just a major changing point in my life. And again, I do believe that God was using it to break me out of the thing that I was stuck in. The hard things that I went through in the church when I was young, part of the reason I went and did the rock and roll thing was honestly because I loved entertainment. I knew how to gather people. I was good at it. It came very naturally. I was great at promoting and advertising and branding and marketing. It just came naturally. And so but part of my, so part of it was that I was good at that. I loved it. I loved music and performance and putting on a show or a production. I think that's why I love to speak live and put on events too, because to me, it's an entire production and experience you can give someone. But, part of the music thing was that I was also going, these people in the church that that really brought some harm to my life and my family. It's like, I'm going to stick it to them and I'm going to make them angry. Yeah. My goal was to get on the radio so they'd have to hear my project no matter where they went. And literally what I wanted. And then I started getting text messages from people seeing my artists on the TV at the gym. You know, they play the music videos constantly and they'd be like sending them. And I was like, yes. But I still found that while I was in the music business, even though it feels good in that way in the flesh, I realized it was still those people controlling me because I was living to irritate them. And I was succeeding, but it wasn't fulfilling my purpose. It made me feel alive for 5 minutes because I think I was using my gifts to a greater degree,
right?
Which was why success was coming, but I was not living out my purpose and the way I was built. I was raised very, very different with an understanding that I had a high purpose and that I was meant and born for delivering impact to the world. And so while I was in that, I was running. I was in that moment when I was really running from God.
Yeah.
And even when I was doing good things, they weren't coming from a place of being led by God to do it. I was doing good things in the flesh. And I know, by the way, I've talked to you about it, but you know, that book, The Spiritual Man by Watchman Nee, is incredible because, you know, he's even talking about that even as men, we can do bad in the flesh by sinning, but when we try to do right in the flesh, it's also sin because it's self-righteousness.
Yeah.
There's no good in us and we can't do good. And so I thought I had it together at some level. And I knew I wasn't living up to where I should. I was hiding in the shadows. I wasn't super loud about my faith. If someone would have asked me, I would have told them. I tried to love people where they were at, but I also made far too much peace with the culture that was around me. I got too comfortable with, you know, I'm not just eating dinner in the taxpayer's house or in the tax collector's house. You know, sin is around me and it's bothering me less and less.
Yeah.
And the kind of things that you witness and the kind of things you're around on a regular basis are they deteriorate the soul. And I was in not a good place and I was getting that depression. I told you I reached the end of what I felt like my father could teach me. I was longing for a father in my life.
Yes.
And I think that's, you know, talking about why we do what we do the other day when I chatted with you is, you know, both of us come from that place of we're not doing this because it's the best way to make money in the world. We're doing this because there's a longing in our hearts that we've had and a thing that we've needed deeply.
Yeah.
And we know how desperately we've wanted to look to someone and go, will you please father me? Will you please help me? What do I do next? What do I not know? What can you teach me? Please discipline me and show me the way.
Right.
And we want to be that for someone else because we knew how bad we needed it when we were 20, 25, 26, or even 35. It doesn't matter. We can always grow, but I think we're always looking for a father.
Mm-hmm.
I was in that place in my life. Dad, I love you, but I need a dad. I need somebody who can tell you what you don't know. And so I had hired this dude. I made up my mind before I called up this guy that no matter what number he said on the phone, I was going to say yes. I wanted to change my life that desperately. And, you know, he wouldn't tell me how much it was till the third call after I was hooked. And I realized I needed him in my life. And he goes, and he said, you ready to jump off the building? I said, well, how many floors are on this building? And he goes, there's 100,000 of them. Woo! And I was like, dude, I had barely cleared 6 figures for the first time in my life a couple years prior.
Mm-hmm.
That's a massive amount of money, but I was in that place in life where I was just like, I don't care what it takes. I don't care what I have to give up. I want to give my family more. I want to give more to the world. I need to be living in my purpose, and I've got to find a way to live on the inside.
Right.
Because I was totally successful on the outside. I think I cleared close to $250,000 the year before in my one business. I had a band on the radio and on tour with the act that ended up going #1 alternative. I felt I was popular. We had media going on. I felt that my family looked great, but under the surface, I felt like I was dying on the inside.
Yeah.
And I was willing to do anything to get to a place where I felt like I was free. And there was also that setting off in me, that righteous anger at what some people in the music industry had done to my career and my dream after building it for a decade. Just as success, the wheels of success are turning, and we're starting to reap the rewards of money starting to come in, and then you're branded as something online that you're not, and then it's ripped away from you in an instant. And so I wanted to go to war with something, and I wanted to know how, and I knew in my gut what it was right away, because I've been from it for 10 years. And I think for 20 years, I had noticed the constant deterioration of masculine men. It got to the point where, like, I'll be walking down the street. My goal is just to make sure I'm male from a block away. Literally, that's my goal in life. Because I'm walking like, dude or chick, I can't tell, and it started to become an issue. I think my dad was a really masculine type as well, but and so I was always kind of like grossed out by the weak men that I saw around. But when all of this happened and the world shut down, it really just woke me up and snapped me out of it. And but anyway, so I signed a contract with this guy. 24 hours later, they rolled out the Rona, and they were telling everybody they had to shut their businesses down.
Wow.
And people were calling me up left and right going, we got to hold off on this contract. We got to hold off on this contract. So I've signed the biggest bill of my life, and all the businesses started to.
Wow.
And then the riots and all that stuff. And then we just decided to leave. But there were a number of moments that really kicked me into, I think, being active or realizing that God was trying to really yank my chain and wake me up.
Yeah.
Even months before the coronavirus and all that, and finding a coach, I was, interestingly enough, I'm going to write about this in my second book that's coming out next year. But there was this moment. I was in Spokane, Washington, and I was there for a basketball tournament. I was coaching a tournament, and I had, all the games are over for the day. I've got a Saturday to myself, and I was in the depths of despair, frustrated, depressed, and I had to go across town. So I got an Uber. Before the Uber showed up, I rolled a joint. I smoked my brains out. I was high as a kite, and I'm sitting here. I'm just trying to get through the day, and I'm so frustrated. I'm angry at God. My career's going down the toilet, and I'm sitting here not knowing what to do. I get in an Uber, and the guy asked me to not sit in the front seat. I was going to go sit in the front seat. He's like, hey, sit in the back if you don't mind. This is my office up here. I was like, all right. So I sit in the back seat, and I go, so, what do you do for a living? Because he's obviously got his office. He's not an Uber driver. He goes, oh, I'm a pastor.
Of course.
I go, no.
Yeah.
He goes, I've heard that out of a number of people.
Yeah.
And bottom line is, by the end of this ride, this guy's like speaking into my life, telling me that God loves me. He cares. He can find me anywhere. Dude, I'm sitting stoned, high as a kite, sunglasses on, tears running down my cheeks in the back of this guy's Uber. And I just realized in that moment, it was like God, I felt it down in here, that where he spoke to me and he went, I will find you anywhere.
Yes.
I will find you anywhere.
99 to 1. Leave the 99 for 1 kind of moment.
It was wild, man. Just, out of nowhere, the guy shared with me. He told me about where his son was in kind of that place in life where he was in that running mode, and where his heart was for his son. And simply, he just spoke life into me. And I knew that God was really trying to get my attention. And then, of course, everything else unfolded. And it kind of just forced me and launched me into what I knew I had to do. From there, it woke something else in me too, watching what was going on in the world, watching men who I respected and I loved. And I understand everybody's got a differing opinion, but with some of the things that I heard out of men, I got to go get the juice because I can't give up my job.
Yeah.
In that moment, I was filled with, honestly, rage.
Yeah.
It just, hold on a second. So you care about your sons, because this is what this guy had said to me is, I can't give my sons nothing. I've got to give them a good life. My son's got to live. And I'm sitting here going, understood. But at the same time, what have you just taught your sons?
Yeah.
That you're essentially teaching your sons that your job gets to tell you what to put in your body.
Oh yeah.
How I just don't understand what you don't recognize about what you're teaching these boys who are going to grow up into men, that you do not believe. In other words, what this guy's saying at some level is, I do not believe that I am capable of doing something better and doing something more.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just a moment where I'm watching people close their businesses willingly. I couldn't believe it. Willingly putting this thing over their face, willingly shooting their body up with stuff. And it wasn't just men without means, it was men without a pair between their legs. And that's really what it came down to.
Yeah.
I had already been, as I told you, a little bit disgusted with what I had seen over the course of the last 20 years, just watching the deterioration of masculinity, especially where I live.
Mm-hmm.
And I just knew what I had to be doing. At that moment, I stopped working with artists. I stopped working with women. I stopped working with couples, and I solely dedicated myself to working with men.
Yeah.
And this is where that life hack of leave town comes into play. Is you realize in that moment, and I'm honestly so grateful for 2020 and 2021, because it was this great delineating line of showing me who I could be in the foxhole with and who I couldn't, and who I was willing to build life with and who I wasn't.
Absolutely. I'm in the same boat.
Yeah. And I wish that I would have recognized the value of that when I was much younger. It took this to show me what real friends are, who you cannot count on, what to expect from people who praise you. They will be the first to bite you. And it was like, I don't know how to compare it to anything else than Gideon finding his 300. It's like you're sitting there and just going, I can't do life with this.
Yeah.
I can't. People that would actually advocate for this and tell me that I'm not. I mean, people I went to church with for 25 years and trusted. I have been in my home at Christmas, who I've considered aunts and uncles in my life. I'm sitting here going, you've lost your mind. And we can't cohabitate. And so it just ejected me. And I knew that my job was not just to help equip men and help men achieve their results. I think that results coaches are great.
Yeah.
I think life coaches are great. But I am not just a typical life coach or results coach that's going to work with you because you just want to go someplace.
Yeah.
If I'm not in alignment with where you're headed, I'm not helping you. I'm at war. Like, it put me on the warpath. And that's why I'm so grateful, I think, for 2020, 2021, is it cut off every relationship that I could not make peace with. It helped me quickly identify who I needed to be talking to and who I needed to link arms with. And it put me in a very, very aggressive stance. So I went from completely sidelined and really not saying anything to people are asking me, what are you doing in Texas? And my answer to them with a straight face is, I'm building an army.
Yes.
It is my purpose to build as many strong, free, ungovernable men as possible by teaching them how to govern themselves and govern their own lives in submission to God.
That's right.
So people will call me and say, well, will you help me with this? And I go, well, what's your vision for the world? Because this whole tolerance and diversity is your strength stuff is absolute garbage. It's been proven by history. It's proven by any sort of data you want to pull together. Diversity is not your strength because people don't mean diversity of color. What they mean is diversity of ideology.
That's right. Yeah.
It means diversity of value system, and value systems cannot coincide. Or if they don't coincide, they will not be able to cohabitate.
Right.
And it opened my eyes to the spiritual war that I always knew up here we were in, but it hadn't sunk into here that we were in. And I recognized this is not just some battle that's taking place. It's waging so hard. The battle is raging that it's starting to spill out into the flesh. And I also started to realize in that moment, I have been extremely kind to homosexual people, extremely kind to, I've never kicked anybody out of a show. I've never said anything to anybody. Dude, the most powerful people in music, half of them sexual would identify that way. And we never had a problem with any of them. But the second that it came out that I was a conservative, which goes with my values, I was now a pariah and they were willing to destroy my life.
You didn't fit into that hive mind of diversity. You wasn't diverse enough.
Yeah, well, exactly. Well, but the real issue is it's an attempted throwing off of God. It goes back to that song, "Why Did the Nations Rage?"
Yeah.
People who, marching in the streets, we want equality. They're screaming about their gay stuff. They don't want equality. They want to be recognized. But the reason they want to be recognized is because they want to be culturally accepted, because they know deep down that it's wrong. And so they don't want anybody to tell them that it's wrong. They can't have you just leave them alone. They want you to endorse it because they feel guilty for it.
I agree. Absolutely. And I think though too, that it's kind of a becoming your own God type of thing. You know what I mean? And which means you require everybody to worship you for your boldness and braveness to be so diverse in a world that does not necessarily accept that from a moral or ideology standpoint. And it really got me to thinking. I was like, why does my opinion matter so much to you that you can't live in peace if I don't agree with how you're living your life? I was like, it doesn't. My opinion does not matter. I haven't come at you and told you that you're doing wrong or anything like that. I've let you live your life in peace. But the minute that I stand up and put like a blanket statement over the matter, then there is a combativeness that has to happen then.
I think what we think right now, it comes down to a single word, which is accountability. They want to throw off accountability. That's all humans. It's all of us. It's not just those people. I'm getting to a point with that. It's not a rabbit trail that doesn't have anywhere it's going. But what I'm getting to is I realized in that moment that, you hear these same people tell you all day, you can't push your values upon me. You can't religion on me. But look at what we've seen the last 2 years. When they are in control, they will push their religion on you.
And you get canceled for it. Not only do they disagree. Mm-hmm.
They'll put your address on the internet and they threaten your life. So I realized in that moment that, and you may have a different view on this, this is just my view on it, is Christians are way too nice. We've become way too nice.
Yeah.
We have been put into this place where we think that nice and kind are the same thing. And I think we've moved away from being able to recognize that this world, whether we like it or not, is ruled by force. Mm-hmm. There are simple things. There are a lot of things where, especially men in this country, have been so dumbed down and so neutered that they don't understand that force still rules the world. I was thinking this in the gym yesterday, and I understand that, we need to walk by the Spirit, but I work out a lot. I trained the last 2 years. One of the things that this whole journey put me on was the last 2 years, my mission has been to make myself as hard to kill as possible and as dangerous as possible. I'm doing tactics. I'm working out twice a day. I'm on the mats with people. I've done the MMA thing. I'm out bleeding with tactical teams in the winter in Florida. Like, I am doing whatever I can to make sure that I can cause serious harm if I need to.
Right.
But I think that there are a lot of people that don't recognize that this world is still worldly and that force still rules it. And that if you do not impose your values and impose your will upon the world, it will impose it upon you and your children.
That's right.
And so there's been this thing of, well, let's not be aggressive. Let's be nice. And as I said to you the other day on the phone, we forget that Jesus pulled up into a church parking lot, made a whip in the car, and went inside. Now, was that zeal for his house? Yeah, somebody's going to point that out. But the point is, he used physical violence. And let's not forget the God that we serve.
That's
the
right.
God that we serve had Israel putting people to the sword. Men, women, children, animals, wipe them off the face of the earth. Now, I'm not suggesting that we go out the door with, something. I don't want something to come back and bite me. I'm not telling anybody to go do this, but I do think it's important for men to know their line, but also for people to recognize that there are certain rules about the world that exist, period. And so I got into this thing where I said, it is my mission. It is my purpose. It dropped in me. I knew that I had to help men become something that was free. And it begins in the spirit, begins in the soul. It goes from the inside out. But I help guys get in shape. I help them get their food right. I help them get their money right. I help them start businesses, work on their relationships. I don't solely work on business. I work with people in a holistic sense because every aspect of life touches every other aspect of life.
That's
people
right.
Problems, they got personal problems that are showing up in their business.
100% agree with that.
But I think that was a massive thing that I woke up to, was just these people, and many of these men who would say no, don't feel like they can, strictly from a financial standpoint.
Yeah.
And it ended up being true in many ways. We saw two different classes of people really emerge and be treated completely differently. And resource in this world means influence. That's the reality. And so that was a big part of it for me too, is I was sitting here going, these guys aren't free. They're slaves and don't know it. They're slaves to culture. They're slaves to what people think. They're slaves to popularity, but they're also slaves to a paycheck and a job.
That's right.
And I felt this amazing freedom on the road, to where it was like, when we crossed over into Idaho from Washington State, it felt like we just climbed over the wall. You know, it's like this moment of freedom, and I'm going across the country and I'm watching these people, watching, social media, my friends and stuff, everything is shut down and they're absolutely miserable. And I'm sitting here free on the road, and they're going, how are you doing this? And so people really started asking me, how are you having so much freedom? How are you living life this way? And I just started working with guys immediately.
I do think, though, that social media and, we talked about how like TV shows and things like that, they have done a great job of putting the woman in a place of authority and a man as just the dumb guy. We think of, oh crap. Everybody loves Raymond. And,
Yeah.
You're just a dumb guy. You know what I mean? You're an idiot. Your opinion doesn't matter. All of these different things. And they make it comical because it's entertaining. And that's what their demographic wants to see, is a, strong-willed woman and a dumb guy that pretty much submits to whatever he's being told to do. And so a lot of men have just made it that their mentality, that they don't have to take leadership, or they don't feel confident enough in themselves because of their lack of education, because of their lack of upbringing. Maybe their father figure was not, maybe all they had was a mom or a female figure. And so they took on those traits instead. And I know a lot of men like that you might think are homosexual, but they're not. They just grew up in a very feminine, environment, and kind of took on the same mannerisms and the way that women talk and stuff like that. And so they don't really have any, I'll say, cornerstone of masculinity or manhood or leadership or anything like that. I had a client that, was pretty much in the same boat. His dad was in the picture, but he wasn't present. And so he felt so much more accepted by his mom and the women in his family that he began to just pick up their traits, because the father was not willing enough to be present in that relationship. And so what I think is so important with us is that we don't have all the answers. We don't have all the answers, but we are intentional and we are present, and we plan to, give that foundation, give that cornerstone, and give men the opportunity to grow and to say, look, I don't like the way that I am. I don't feel like I'm functioning properly as a husband or a father or, an entrepreneur or whatever you want to call it, and like, you got to the rock bottom, you was sitting like from an internal standpoint in that Uber, and you begin to weep because you realized, right, that you was in a place where you was ready to change. It was almost like your father, your heavenly father, had come up and grabbed you, wrapped his arms around you and said, look, I'm here, man. Like, all I want is for you to understand you have an opportunity to come back, that prodigal son situation. And so, I really think that from a social standpoint and like a psychological standpoint, even, everyone has begun to shift more over to relativeness. So like, morality is relative to however you think morality should be. Truth is relative to however you think truth should be, where in fact truth is truth. There's no changing truth. Everybody doesn't have their own truth or anything like that. That's not the way it should be, because what ended up happening is that, we see how far we can take things, just like Babylon. We see how far we can take things. That's not a sin if I can justify it. and say, well, that's just how I was born or whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it really quickly becomes manipulating yourself into an identity that you are not. See, God had created us all with an identity that is to glorify him. Like he knew us before he knit us in our mother's womb. Right.
Yeah.
And a lot of society likes to twist that and say, well, I was born in the wrong body. I was like, says who? You know what I'm saying? That you have a lot of audacity to say that the way that God created you is wrong.
Well, we're seeing an assault on truth.
Yeah.
That's what's happening society wide. And I think that's why we have to look at it. You know, he is truth. It's again, it's an attack on God with what we've seen with the throwing off of accountability and the throwing off of truth. It's the throwing off of the Father.
That's right.
And that's really what this all comes down to. You were talking about what men are portrayed as in TV shows, the weak male, but let's also be fair and say that I would say it's part of the larger agenda for sure. I think that if you're smart enough to see patterns, you can see patterns of what we're seeing happen around us in pop culture. I think that there is some intentionality to it, but I don't think it's much of a reach to say that TV shows like that reflect the average American home.
Yeah.
I don't think it created the average American home by portraying a man like that. I think the TV helped create a bit of that. But let's be real. How many guys even listening to this right now are overweight, eating junk in front of the TV or in front of their cell phone scrolling while digital stuff is raising their kids and while women are raising their kids in the school system?
Right.
It's one thing to point the finger at Hollywood, but go, okay, but are they lying?
That's fair. That is fair.
What we're seeing is the fault of men. Where men go, society follows. Men have become weak. They've become addicted. They are addicted to not having responsibility on top of it. They abdicate everything. Abdication and delegation, like I use the word abdicate a lot because I think it's such a strong picture. When you abdicate, it means you step off the throne.
Yeah.
And when you've abdicated the throne, someone else gets to rule on it. When you don't take responsibility for any aspect of your life and you abdicate responsibility to someone else gets responsibility for the decisions that are being made in that area. If you do not understand money, someone will understand it for you and spend it for you. If you do not understand health, someone in a lab coat will sell you their Pfizer product. If you abdicate responsibility to train your children and teach them what they believe and show them a value system worth living for, someone in the classroom will.
That's right.
And we've got a ton of feminine influence. And so because there's so much feminine influence and men are not being men first and foremost in the home, now we've got people that base everything upon feelings because females are feeling-based creatures.
From a wiring standpoint, yeah.
Yeah. They don't pursue logic from a natural standpoint. It's much more about the way things feel. Look, the way you said it as opposed to what you said, the way it was delivered as opposed to, what happened. And so we've got a bunch of guys running around who are living according to their feelings, and they feel like sitting in front of the football game all day Sunday. And I'm not football. I love football. I love a good movie as much as anybody. I've got my own stuff I like for dopamine too. We all do. We all like our versions of fun. But men have allowed this to happen. Men are the driver behind it. And women jump into those masculine roles that you talked about because we're not fulfilling our roles.
Right.
And then we're in a place where, well, hey, of course the woman runs the home and the guy's the weakling. He's chosen that.
Yeah.
He's not out of order.
It's more comfortable. It's more comfortable to escape from responsibility. And that's what it is. It's an escape. And, anybody scrolling through their phone for hours on hand, it's an escape. There are responsibilities. There are things that have to get done. And, so procrastination has really risen, if we want to talk about that, because there's so much more that you can do just to be comfortable from just sitting down on the couch. You get a dopamine kick after dopamine kick after dopamine kick, and now you're addicted to dopamine. And so it's like having those phantom vibrations on your phone. You're walking around and you're expecting a notification and you think you get one. You look at your phone, it's not there. It's because your brain is still looking for a dopamine kick. I had a post the other day about the difference between comfort and fulfillment. And comfort says, hey, you need to not do anything so that you can maintain your comfortability. It's from a place of fear. It's from a place of procrastination, because the whatever it is that you see, you cannot see dopamine on the other side of it, because you're not looking for fulfillment. You're looking for comfort, right?
Right. Yeah.
And so, say for example, I've got to write a paper, right? And that it's going to take you probably a week to write the paper. And hey, I've got to sit down for an hour a day at least to make progress on this paper. Well, what ends up happening is you value that comfort more than you value that fulfillment. And so you end up waiting to the last minute to write that paper. And now you have to crash write that paper just to get it done, right? And so whereas fulfillment, you actually find comfort on the other end of your responsibilities. So you can say, okay, I'm going to work on my body. Like you said, you've been working on your body for the past couple of years. You get fulfillment out of the fact that you are working hard. You find value in being uncomfortable for a moment, so that whenever you are sitting down, you're saying, I earned everything that I'm experiencing right now. Like, that's a question that I ask my clients sometimes is, did you earn it? So they'll go out and do something, or they'll be ready to go to bed, but they didn't get their workout done that day. Did you earn it? Did you put in the necessary work to say, hey, I can actually take a break today? Yeah. Because your goals are not going to wait on you.
Well, God doesn't make mistakes.
That's right.
It's the way he made us. It's the way we've always been. It's like I said this to somebody the other day. We were talking about hormones. He wanted to talk, and his girlfriend trying to get pregnant. I was talking to him about what we eat. He's like, well, I like to do it this way. I like to do it that way. And I was like, look, man, the sooner you realize that anytime we try to better or improve on what God did, it ends up giving us cancer, ruining relationships, making us fat, whatever it may be. You can't make better what God already did.
Right.
And you're not going to be able to take out of us what is best for us. It says that the hand of the diligent will prosper. If a man doesn't work, he shouldn't eat. Mm-hmm. God knew what we needed, and something has been taken out of men in general. I think that as boys, we pick up swords. We want to go on an adventure.
Yes.
And what we're doing with those things is we're trying to escape, whether it be the phone or the TV or something. We're trying to give ourselves adventure. I can't remember who it was, but a couple of weeks ago, I heard a guy on a podcast saying depression and aimlessness is that guys don't want to go to work because they know exactly what's going to happen. They know exactly the feeling they're going to have at 9, 10, 11, what lunch is going to be like. They know what traffic's going to be like, and they're dreading it. Mm-hmm. I actually had a guy the other day who I was a prospect who was calling me about becoming a client. He actually ended up, becoming a client. But we were on the phone, and I actually asked him if I could record it. And so I'm going to cut it up, put it online this week. But this guy described for like 2 full minutes, just like, I just want an adventure. You could hear it in this guy. It gave me goosebumps. But listen to this guy talking about, every time I think about life, I don't want to go to my job. I want to strap on a sword. I want to go with Frodo into the woods. I want to go hack off some heads. I want to go throw a ring into the fire, and I want to fight for something that matters.
Yes.
That's what every man wants and needs on the inside. You don't have to tell boys to wrestle, fight, play, knight in shining armor. They do it. We're meant to conquer something. And if you're not in the process of conquering something inside of you, you're either going to try to conquer it through someone else, which ends up being controlling, or you end up conquering it through the TV, which ends up, you're not actually accomplishing anything. It's just giving dopamine hit after dopamine hit. When you really need a castle to conquer, you need a woman to chase, you need something to build. Mm-hmm. It's the way
a cheap version of it. That's what it is a cheap version of adventure, is those quick dopamine hits. And at some point it becomes not good enough. That's where a lot of addiction comes from, is the fact that you don't get the same dopamine experience as you did before, as you continue to do it consistently. Now you need more, and you need more, and you need more. And so you end up chasing that cheap version rather than putting the work in. That's it. That's it. And I think I was listening to a podcast with Dr. Andy Huberman. I'm not sure if you sent
me his stuff.
Yeah.
The hormone guy, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And he does a great job of explaining how we have like a baseline of dopamine, right? And if we fall between that dopamine level, but if we fall below that dopamine level, we end up actually becoming more driven because now we have to chase that dopamine and to get it back. And so it's that the more and more that we have something that is giving us dopamine, it's that cheap version, we'll say the cheap version or whatever, our pursuits, right? It falls below baseline, and then we spike it, and then we have a threshold, right, where we feel fulfillment. Okay. Yeah. So baseline, threshold, below baseline. Okay. So that threshold keeps getting higher and higher. So you get less and less fulfillment. And so you need more and more to actually reach that dopamine fulfillment. Okay. So, and that's where addiction comes from, but for the majority. But like you said, we need an adventure, right? And do we value how we are supposed to chase that adventure, or do we just want to escape and find it, the cheap way? And how being able to express that to men, and people think you're crazy. Hey man, I went to the gym today. I worked out. I feel awesome now. I didn't want to get up. Super motivated, super like engaged to life. Yeah, and I'm like, and they're like, that doesn't appeal to me whatsoever. And I was like, you haven't experienced it. You haven't tried. And so you'll notice that once people start building momentum and they start finding things and start experiencing life more and start walking in their identity, that they become more efficient in life. Not only more efficient, but they start believing in themselves more, not just from a confidence point, but they feel like they are themselves. They don't feel like they are being controlled by all of their external environment or the people around them or their social media or anything like that. They're actually taking the bull by the horns and doing something with their life. And all it does is it adds value to their life. And that's what I am in full pursuit of with other people. And
I think though the important part to always mention with this conversation is it's not just about the achievement or about the success. I do love the way Napoleon Hill terms the word success in his book Think and Grow Rich. Also, if somebody who's listening to this hasn't heard it, just go YouTube The Strangest Secret by Earl Nightingale. It's a talk he gave in the early 1900s. I want to say 20s, maybe 30s. Mm-hmm. And anyway, incredible what he said. Success is the progressive realization of a worthy ideal. Mm-hmm. And really, that's what gives us that sense of dopamine. It's not that we got a hit of something. It's that we got a progressive hit of something.
Yes.
It's what was around the next corner. And success is not an arrival place. It's a state of being. It's right. A place of being in. So if you have completed step 1 and you're on step 2, you are in success.
Yes.
In succeeding steps, in succession. And so I think it's important for people to realize that success is not a place, it's a state of being. But then, that those daily things are about a progressing and a moving forward. Tony Robbins always said, he said, the biggest form of, or one of the major keys to human happiness is the feeling that you're progressing, that you're moving towards something. That's why people get bored at jobs. And it's why oftentimes jobs will move people around. Like big corporations will move people from job type to job type. They're not just doing it because the person wanted to move. And sometimes the person doesn't even want to. They're trying to give them a change in something so they see progression and they see forward movement. Right. So they stay and offload cost.
Potential for growth.
But the key to all of it is what, the thing that so many people talk about, the why. What is your why?
Exactly.
I used to hate that phrase because I always pictured some guy who was 25 with bleached white teeth and, hair on stage in a suit who has experienced no life and telling me how to live and how he made his millions off of Bitcoin.
Right.
But I started to realize after a while, what he's talking about is your why is your mission. Mm-hmm. I think that all men, it's just my opinion, but I believe that all men have the same purpose. I believe mission is different than purpose. And each of us have a very unique mission. I think you can be fulfilling your purpose, but in your own way. In my estimation, what I see is I believe the purpose of every man is to father. I do not necessarily think that means strictly in a physical sense. I believe that God is the father and he's the ultimate example, but it's our job as men. It is our ultimate purpose to help other people behind us move forward.
Amen.
To take people under our wing and to help lead them forward. That is our purpose. Our purpose is to lead. Our purpose is to be a father. But our mission individually is our own mountain, our own battle, our own war, our own vision to fight. And, as many self-development books as I read, as many people as I asked for input in my life, until I hired a coach to work with me on my life, I had never been asked the question, what do you want in 2 years? It's such a weird question because people will say, well, what do you want? What's your dream? People throw out here and there, or, hey, and I think people throw out very generalized things like, oh, house, few $1 million, love to have a couple nice cars, blah, 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 blah. But
materialistic.
And I don't think there's anything wrong with material. I think that material tells you a lot about what you need to change in your own life. I know
Absolutely.
For me, a big part of identifying what I wanted 2 years from when I started was identifying the type of life I want my family to live. Do I even want to live in the Northwest? Why am I here? And all these thoughts it was like right after I hired this coach, I got asked this question and the wheels started turning. And then all the stuff happened and it pushed me toward doing what I had in my head. But, so many people don't sit back and go, what do I actually want to leave? What is the legacy that I want to leave? I'm not talking about money and inheritances. What impact will you have left? I think money can be a part of impact, but it has to be used for something. But what do you want when you're dead? What do you want people to say of you? What do you want to be true? I think Joe Rogan had a great way of putting it. He said, pretend you're a character in a movie or a book. You're the hero. What would the hero do? You need a mission to accomplish. That mission drives every bit of everything for me. The vision of what I have for the future and what I want to be able to do. Before I had that vision and clarity about what I was building, what war I was fighting, what cause I was fighting on behalf of, it wasn't enough.
Yeah.
The workout wasn't consistent. The diet wasn't consistent. And it's not just about those things. Even my business, I was making money, but it wasn't growing. It was just sitting around. I wasn't happy. The people I was leading weren't happy. The second I got a sense of purpose and vision, it changed everything. And at that point, I could have lived and did live on a lot less because I was happy than, having more and being unhappy. And now it's reversed to where I'm the happiest I've ever been and I'm doing the best I've ever done because I'm in this place of just attacking something I love. I think that's another thing too in life when we're working extra hard on building a business or building our bodies or any other goals that we have, and we don't have a clear mission for it. Sooner or later, it just becomes rite and ritual. Those reasons aren't enough. You need something to hunt.
I was just about to say that most predators, man, they will not pursue a prey if it will not put up a fight. And so they end up looking for the prey that will put up a fight. If you're not running, then they don't want to chase you, Well,
lions in this don't go hunting.
That's right.
You've taken the fight out of them. You've taken what makes them a lion out of the lion.
There was a great quote. I can't remember where it came from, but they were like, how do you get these elephants that you see at the circuses so tame? They're so big. Well, what they do is they take you whenever you are a baby elephant, and they put a stake in the ground. And when you're a baby elephant, you can't pull that stake out of the ground. And so you're just tied to it and you're running around, you're trying your best to get away. But after so long, you start to realize, you start to believe that I'm never going to be able to pull this stake out of the ground. And so as that elephant grows, it has that same mentality. And so you can get an elephant to stay exactly where it is, even though it's the most powerful thing in the room, by what it thinks.
100%. I think that's why you need outside perspective. That was one of the things that helped me most about getting somebody to work with. And I know I'm talking about coaching a lot, but we're both coaches. This is what we do, including
absolutely
that reason. But that's why I tell people honestly that getting a coach was the best decision I ever made in my life outside of who I chose to marry. And it's because for the first time in my life, I was actually exchanging value for someone's opinion. every time I ever asked anybody's opinion up until then, I could take it or leave it. Now when I'm paying an amount of money that actually makes it meaningful to me, now if I don't make the decision, if I don't take the advice, I'm the idiot because I'm paying for nothing. But one of the biggest helps that I've had is that whole blessing and the curse of humanity. You're not good at seeing what's going on in your own life a lot of the time when you're in your own life. It's like being down in the forest. You pull yourself up and you get the bird's eye view. All of a sudden you can see where you're going, but it's very hard to do that when you're emotionally involved in all the things going on in your life and you're not able to see the path. Sometimes you got to pull yourself out of the chessboard, but it's that blessing and the curse of, what does the scripture say? It says, why would you go after your brother and about the speck in his eye before looking at the plank in your own?
That's right.
While that is true, it also shows that it's a bit of a gift too, because I can unemotionally look in your life and see what you need to change in probably many ways.
And you could ask the right question at the right time and it be so impactful. And, we talked about this yesterday a little bit too, about kind of where Men Over Mountain Project kind of started. And that was where I was at this like terrible place in my life. And at this time, I didn't even have a coach, didn't have anybody holding me accountable. And so I was going through this major grief where, I had lost my best friend who was my accountability, who was my spiritual father. And I've never felt that kind of hurt in my life. But I felt like I was in this place where I was weak and vulnerable. And so that reflected out into my life. All the things that I found valuable beforehand, it kind of went out the window. And so I went off the deep end. I felt like I was in a cornfield. And if you've ever stood in a cornfield, you know that, hey, you can't see over the stalks unless you're like, play basketball or something, But anyway, so things nobody in my life. But anyway, so so things kept jumping out of the bush, man, out of the cornfield, and just started beating the crap out of me. So I would have these things come up in life and it would just kind of stack up and accumulate. And I would just be fighting for my life, one thing at a time, with no perspective, no foresight or anything like that. And so I finally got to the end of myself saying, okay, I'm obviously can't do this stuff in my power anymore. I've been thinking that I was stronger than I am, so it took a lot of pain for me to realize that I wasn't doing okay. And so I began to pray. And one of the things that I felt like I heard from the Lord was that, I needed to evaluate, I needed to journal. Right. And so the way that I felt like the Lord kind of led me to journal was saying, okay, how are you doing physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, in those 4 areas? And in every single area, I felt like I was failing. So I would write it down every day. I wouldn't try to come up with a program or anything to fix myself at that particular moment. I just wanted to see, I wanted to observe what was going on in my everyday life so that I can have that external perspective of what's going on. And so as I began to do that, I was reminded of the scene from Lion King, right? Where Mufasa and Simba is sitting on Pride Rock and they're looking out over the kingdom. And Mufasa says to Simba, he says, all of this kingdom is going to be yours one day. And never go to that dark area over there. So to me, that meant that I needed to get a higher perspective. I needed to see through the eyes of God. I needed to really value how God even sees his children or the people that he has made. And that way I can respond to them in the same way, right? Because if he treats them a certain way, then I should treat them a certain way if I'm going to be representative of him, if I'm going to be an ambassador, right? Yeah. And so that doesn't always mean that you are soft, because, and I'm saying that because the Bible says that if you love your children, you will discipline them, right? And I'm not saying I have the authority to discipline other people, but I do have the authority to say whether or not something's okay, right? Whether or not something is moral or if they're in sin or whatever. Because if you love them, you don't want them to be falling in that way. You don't want them to go down that path of evil, or you know what I'm saying? And so I began to realize that I needed that perspective more. I needed to come up higher. And so those things that I had learned in the wilderness, I took into my everyday life so that I was more of a watchman of my life, right? So as men, I believe we're supposed to be watchmen over our households, over our communities, over our places of influence, right? So we have that perspective. Most watchmen are in a tower and they're looking out over everything to see if something that is harmful to their sphere of influence is going to try to attack, right? And with that being said, there's another analogy, and that is between the gates, right? So most places that were guarded by walls had two gates, right? There was a gate on the outside that you would come to if you was an outsider, and there's a gate on the inside to the inner court or into the actual community, right? And so somebody would stand in the middle of those two gates and say whether or not you was allowed into the community, or say, for example, you wanted to speak to the king, right? Well, the person at the gate had to use discernment and say, hey, what you have to say to the king is not valuable enough or within what we believe. And we do not want that toxicity or poison to come into our community. So we're going to protect our community. We're going to protect our king. And so they were very responsible for the health and longevity of their society, right?
Yeah.
And I believe that we have that that charge as well, as men and as leaders to do the same thing. And that's what this is about.
100%, man. I don't think men understand. The average man does not understand the power that they have to actually change something and to shape the world.
Yeah.
And I think that's what is different with me now and waking up in the morning versus what it used to be. Is it used to be about maintaining. Now it is, I am going to change the world.
Yes.
Shape the world. I'm going to shape it through my actions. I'm going to shape it through the people I touch. I'm going to shape it through my children. We do impact the world. We absolutely do shape the world around us. And the reason, we've all heard the phrase, it's all it takes for evil to succeed is for good men to do nothing.
That's right.
And there has been a passive, almost on the defense thing that men have been on for far too long. And we have to get aggressive. We have to get offensive. It doesn't mean that you need to go running around punching people. Mm-hmm. It means that you need to start in your own life and understand that you are at war. That there's a spiritual war that has been raging. It has been waged since the beginning of time. It's going to continue going that direction. But if you want something to be different for you and your family, you absolutely have the power to change it.
That's right.
But there is that warring spirit that I identify with. And I know not everybody's like that. For me, it lights my fire. I want to go to battle. And those are the type of people that I want to be around and the type of people I want to build with.
Right.
But I agree, man, it's been far too peaceful. And we've allowed ourselves to be sidelined and not go and create the world that we want to see for ourselves and that God's put in our hearts to go create.
Mm-hmm. Well, if you even make it physical, there used to be a time when men were proud to fight in the military in the United States of America to protect the freedoms that we have and the values that we have. You look at it now, and the military has been completely neutered, and socialism has really went into a place where it does not need to be. You do not need to be emotional whenever you are having to make a split-second decision. And I know you know this, maybe going through drills and stuff like that. Emotion should not play a role in whether or not you're going to save a life or not. And that's what it's about. It's not about taking a life. It's about saving a life or multiple lives, right? And so what action would you encourage men to take today that would help put them in the right direction?
Well, as I alluded to, I think that the thing we need most is a vision. Mm-hmm. You have to know what you want. You got to have clarity on the future that you want. And I think that sometimes religious people take it as new age people take it as religious, but I do believe that God has given us free will to be able to shape the world in the way that he He speaks to us and shows us. I think a lot of inspiration comes from God, even human inspiration. And I think that when I finally got clear on where I was headed, I knew where to row. You can have one oar out the boat all you want, but until you choose a destination, you're just going to row in circles. There's nowhere to go. You could have a boat and all the fuel in the world, but without knowing where to go, a navigator can't help you.
One-legged duck.
Yeah, you get clear on where you're headed and what you want. For me, I identified that in multiple areas. I'm not just talking about money. I did get specific enough to say the color of the floor and the type of car and, the kind of vacations I wanted to go on. But it also came down to, what do I want my relationships to look like? What do I want my marriage to look like? What do I want my relationship with God to look like? How do I want my kids to see me? When we get very specific about where we want to go, we can then draw up a plan for getting there, because stuff isn't just going to happen. You must be intentional. Like I don't just go to events to go to events. I go there with a specific intention. I go there understanding what my mission is, and then I go about it. If you are not intentional about achieving the future that you want, you're not going to see it, because nobody's going to hand it to you. And if you aren't making plans and running your schedule, someone else is going to dictate what your life serves. So I would say, get clear, get clarity. And this is honestly where working with someone really helped me, because a lot of coaches would tell you, well, I can't help you unless you decide where you're going. The guy I started working with, immediately our number one priority was, what is the clarity? What is the destination? It came forced for me, because I was sitting on the fence for so long that fence had become a choice. Jim Rohn used to say that, sooner or later, the fence becomes a choice. So you might as well just jump off. He's like, if you're going to sit on the fence indefinitely, what if you jump off on the wrong side? Well, at this point, what does it matter? You'll know pretty quick whether you jumped off the wrong side or not, but at least you can start moving in a better direction. And then I want to say it was Taylor Welch, his podcast a couple of weeks ago. He just gave 3 points on clarity. And one of the biggest, and it was point number 3, is forward movement brings clarity. All of us as kids have probably played something, whether it be Age of Empires or like Grand Theft Auto. You've got the map, but most of the map is grayscaled out. You can't see the map.
Till you get to it.
You've accomplished. Moving forward kind of tells you where to go. It's like, I just know I'm headed west. For me, that's where I had to start. I knew that I had to start coaching men. I knew that I had to start writing. I knew that I had to start using my gifts of communication and leadership. And so I just had to start. Things are changing along the way, but it's dialing in. The closer I get and the further along down the road I'm going, things are starting to dial in and the picture's becoming clear. That's part of faith. Faith is just walking forward in what you believe to be true.
That's right.
That's all it is. Faith is not believing unless you're taking action in that belief.
That's right. Faith without action is in vain.
Yeah. And even I think when it comes down to believing in healing or anything like that, do you actually believe you're going to be healed? I told you about something miraculous that happened with my wife recently with her heart. 8 years of heart failure, healed overnight.
Incredible.
Medical impossibility, but we had been living for years in a way that would help bring healing, trying to bring her body back in line with the way God created things. But I think what was more important than that was what we made up our minds to believe.
Right.
We are operating in the belief that she is in the process of being healed, and we will see a healing. Even the words that we spoke, but we became very sure of where we were headed, and we just started walking. And that's got to be number one. If somebody wants something to improve, your question was, if you could help guys do one thing to get on track, where are you headed? If you don't know how to get there and you don't know how to figure it out, work with someone that will help identify that for you.
Right. That 10.1.
Dalton, get on the phone with him. And sooner or later, you got to choose. It's they're the people that are successful in life and get where they want to go are people who chose accountability rather than accountability being thrust upon them.
That's right.
Sooner or later, accountability comes. What we're seeing in society right now is accountability coming for the reckoning that we're seeing. It is accountability. It's being forced upon us now because we didn't speak up. We didn't call out evil when we saw it. We didn't use our hands when we had to. We allowed evil to creep in under the guise of being nice, and look where we're at. Accountability comes. You can either choose it or have it thrust upon you.
That's correct.
Choose accountability. Get someone to help you. Get a father. I think, what were you just saying a few minutes ago? It's like, I don't want to take us off on some major long tangent again, but you were saying when you were looking, I forget what you were saying, but we all need to be fathered. Even the whole Simba thing or the elephant thing. We're talking about the elephant. We're so stuck in our minds with that whole thing, the baby elephant's tied to the stake. He gets bigger, doesn't realize he can pull the stake up, so he stays there forever. Someone could show him the way. So there's some people that are stuck on that side where their mindset is just, I can't, I don't know what to do. And someone has to help walk them out of it. And
that's right.
Show that they can. But then there are people that go to the complete other end of the spectrum where I went, it sounds like you went. You went crazy.
Yeah.
And my dad, it's so funny you mentioned elephants because this came to mind. My dad used to tell a story about authority and male leaders in people's lives. In that there was, and you can look this up, it was in the news a number of years ago, that there was a wild group of elephants that had gotten loose in South Africa. By the way, I've been in South Africa in Kruger National Park, and I was driving. We got stuck between two different herds or two different halves of a herd of elephants. Those things are crazy big. You don't realize it, but it's a tank.
Wow.
But
it's a dinosaur.
Legit. So these multiple elephants that are all males got loose. There was no order because it wasn't a troop, just a bunch of males that got loose. And they were tearing through villages, destroying property, killing people.
I remember hearing this.
They were so out of control that testosterone was actually visibly running down their legs.
Wow.
Somebody, I can't remember who it was, look it up, but somebody said, we need to get an older bull male with them within like 24 hours in order. There's something about male authority, and there's something about submission to a father figure that ends up bringing perspective and discipline to your life. And that's one of the biggest things that people need is that word accountability. People who are having accountability thrust upon them, men that are having accountability thrust upon them, are men who are told when to get up and when to go to sleep.
Well, kids even, man, they ask a lot of questions without saying a word. So whenever they do something, I read a book called Raising Lions or something like that, and it was about kids that were like ADHD or ADD, all of that stuff, right? Because I grew up very strongly with ADHD and still have tendencies in my adulthood, but I had kids and I was like, what the heck is going on? Because I, never had a kid before. And anyway, so it was talking about how people call it the terrible twos, but all it really is learning. Kids are trying to figure out how much power they have. They're trying to figure out what they can get away with. They're trying to figure out what is right and wrong. So what they do is they jump off the fence.
Yeah.
Okay, and then they had to look to their father and say, hey, was this right or wrong? Is this okay? Do I get positive attention for this, or do I get consequences for this? They're asking all these questions without saying a thing. And with somebody not in your life to hold you accountable and say, no, dude, that's not right. You shouldn't do that. You know what I'm saying? Or you're trying to get somewhere, you're trying to lose 30, 40 pounds or whatever, and you're doing it by extreme measures that's not healthy for you, or maybe you're borderline anorexic or bulimic or whatever. It takes somebody from the outside perspective to say, hey, look, let me help you. Let me put you in the right direction. And it's not a power vacuum. It's not like I'm your authority. I need to like I'm powering over you. It is a respectability that I'm here to help you. I want to help you. I want the best for you, just like our Father does. I want the best for you. So I'm going to help you walk through some hard things so that you can come out stronger and you don't have to deal with these things anymore. And then not only that, but as you follow me, someone should follow you. They're like the representation of discipleship, right? So like, as I follow God, you follow me. As you follow me, who's following God, somebody should follow you. And so it's that taking the next person under your wing and not just making it purely about yourself. Because I think so much of our time can be wrapped up in listening to podcasts like this one, or reading books that we never apply anything that we learn. And so we're pretty much just consumers of information and not really making any difference, not even making a legacy for ourselves. You know, what I passed down to my kids, I made it firm in my mind that the things that were passed on to me is like curses. So like alcoholism or, you know, poverty mindset, things like that, that I would weed those things up out of my life so that my kids would have generational blessings rather than generational curses, because my ceiling should be their floor, right? And so as a coach, I want nothing more than people that come beneath me to have a floor where my ceiling is. Now, my ceiling is going to keep getting higher. So I'm going to make sure to push you higher as well. You know what I'm saying? And so
talking about generational leadership and generational fathering.
Yes.
And you're talking about, you know, everybody having someone in their life. I think that, you know, it comes down to humility in many ways. Mm-hmm. You know, that whole statement, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. It's not about the teacher, it's about the student.
That's right.
We've all been in that place where we've heard the same thing 10 times from 10 different people, but it didn't make sense to us because we weren't in enough pain for it to make sense, because we weren't willing to listen.
Yeah.
It comes down to humility. And you used a unique word. I love the word authority, because authority is about choice. Mm-hmm. Power is not. So a man who's having accountability thrust upon him, who's in prison, he's not in prison because of an authority. He's in prison because someone has power over him. Mm-hmm. When you do not choose to operate under authority, you choose to be submitted to power.
That's right.
And there's a big difference. I'm an authority in our home, but my wife willingly submits to my leadership. It would be different if I'm just forcing her. Then it's not authority, it's just power. Now I can just force somebody to do what I'm willing. When you choose to listen to someone, and oftentimes it's, again, because I knew I could have worked with somebody for years and asked somebody about my life. I toyed with it for years. My pain level had to exceed my comfort level to where I was willing to shut up, pay the bill, and listen and apply. Mm-hmm. And I think if I could do anything over again, I would have started doing that earlier in life and not been so stubborn and so independent and so arrogant on my own without humbling myself, choosing someone to learn from and give value to them.
Same here. Absolutely.
But that's where we're all at. We all need father. And now I'm in a place where I realized how valuable it is, and it's moving me along so much faster in life that now I'm constantly looking for more input to bring into my life, because it offloads a ton of learning time too. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's absolutely accelerating. And I 100% agree with what you said. I mean, as somebody who didn't have a father figure, not just, you know, as my actual biological father or stepdad or whatever, I didn't even have a man in my life who was expressing that authority or taking that leadership role, or anybody to be a cornerstone for my manhood. And so I took it upon myself and said, like, I'm the only person I need, you know, that kind of defensive mechanism type of thing. And I'm going to make this work. I believe so much in where I wanted to go and who I wanted to be, but I didn't have the information. I didn't have the accountability. And so I began to have to learn all of this stuff. And I had an old podcast called First Generation Fatherhood, because it was talking about how I never had anybody to father me so that I know how to father forward. And so I really definitely feel like all of the fathering that I experienced came from God. So any wisdom that I may have attained, any information, any like conviction, you know, I definitely feel like I was fathered by God. And I want nothing more than every other man to feel that same thing and know that, hey, you know, if it is important to God, it's important to me. And I feel like also that we can prioritize so many things due to comfort rather than the purpose and plan that God has for our life. And how arrogant is that God can tell us, hey, I want you to work with men. And then we will say, yeah, but I want to do this right now. You know what I mean? So we pretty much tell God to take a, you know, we'll put you on the back burner. We'll come back to you when we feel like we're equipped, when we feel like we're capable. Take the first step of obedience take the first step. And even if you don't have a relationship with the Lord, like take the first step in the vision and the purpose that you see, that you value, that you care about, you know what I mean, that you are passionate about. Take the first step, and then it will accumulate. It will grow and grow and grow. And
Absolutely.
it might look like your life will plateau at some point and that you won't make any progress. At that point, it's not bad to reach out to somebody and say, hey, look, how do I get over this hurdle? How do I get over this obstacle, this mountain, if you will? Because that information that you use to get over that mountain, somebody else needs. And what
do you want? You want to pay somebody, or do you want to spend 10 years searching in circles?
Exactly.
Where I was, even just with my construction business, it didn't grow after the first 10 years. And I was sitting there going, why is this not working? Then I hire somebody and I triple my revenue. You know, it's like I could have cut out a decade just by getting somebody to go, look, bonehead, stop doing this and start doing this. And they were such simple things. Mm-hmm. But again, the issue was me and my arrogance and my desire to do things on my own and my unwillingness to listen. And, you know, we all go through it. But I think that's really what I was probably looking for a lot longer. Was I was looking for a father. I was looking for a leader. I was looking for somebody to show me the way and show me how. Mm-hmm. And I know you've been in that same place too. Let me grab a quick water real quick. I'll be right back. Is that
absolutely?
Right?
Yeah.
All right. See, I've gone full Texas here. I got to get my iced tea going on.
There you go.
I don't know if I don't have. I wish I had a code so I could make money off of this. But if you've never had Spindrift, man, you know Spindrift?
I've never had it, man. I'm gonna have to check it out.
You like sparkling water?
I have in the past. Anything wet always makes me feel better when I'm thirsty.
Nice. Well, dude, here's the thing: is you get like LaCroix and other sparkling waters.
Yeah.
And they taste like, it's like fizzy, but it tastes like somebody yelled the flavor from across the room. Well, you know, there's not a whole lot there.
Yeah.
These things are flavored with real fruit juice, and the flavoring is heavy. I'm an 8 if you're into Enneagrams at all.
I'm a 7.
8. I love it. My wife's a 7.
Yeah.
So I love intense experiences, so heavy flavor, and you can get them at Costco, or you could. Ours has been out of them for a couple of weeks, but I can get them all at Target. There's like 20 different flavors, and I'm addicted.
Look, you have me sold though, because all of the other sparkling waters that I've had that were flavored tasted like dirty dishwater, and so I'm not into that. Yeah.
Yeah, these things are solid. Spindrift all the way. I gotta get a code.
Yeah, I need to get a code from Death Wish Coffee, because I probably kept them in business through the Rona situation.
That's not the one. Is that the one with the skull and all the multicolors?
Yeah, it's skull and crossbones. It's
I'll have to check it out.
Yeah, it's got a ton of caffeine. I think it's like 300 milligrams as compared to like 120 milligrams of caffeine per cup. So
we got a lot of Black Rifle Coffee Company locations around here. I've been doing their Murdered Out, their real dark roast.
Oh, I love it, man. I was this close to wearing a Black Rifle shirt, but I was like, I'm going to be too masculine, you know? But yeah, but anyway, so I would love to be able to afford more Black Rifles. So if they want to send me something, that'd be cool.
Yeah, man.
Yeah. So I wanted to give you an opportunity to kind of share your vision with Foundation. So for example, you know, you possibly having a podcast, kind of what you're doing in Texas, and maybe some projects that you are a part of that, you know, you're kind of working on in the process of.
Sure. Yeah. So as I said, I'm strictly working with men. I'm working with guys majority of them would be business owners and entrepreneurs and people that are wanting to create extra in the financial realm. Those are not the only people I work with, but I do believe that a big part of why I do what I do is simply the word freedom. Mm-hmm. And like I said, with what I witnessed, so many men were unable from a fiscal perspective to say no. So many men were unable to say it from a gut perspective and the ability to stand up for themselves. And so I like to work with guys on both aspects because I believe that money is key to freedom. Mm-hmm. I think that especially, I was raised in the church, and we can talk about that circus sometime because it's a heck of a story.
Yeah, for sure.
Church wars. I'm going to talk all about in my second book. But where was I going with that?
With money being a tool.
Yeah, with money being a tool is, I think in the church we are, and people that are raised religiously, there's almost a thing of virtue that goes with poverty.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Christ had no place to lay his head. Well, that's true, but there were also people that funded his ministry.
The suffering portion.
Right. And I think that there is a suffering, there is a dying, there is a crucifixion. And by the way, this, if you have not read this book and anybody hasn't read this book, I would recommend this book above any other I've ever read on faith and the spiritual walk. It's called The Spiritual Man by Watchman Nee.
Wow.
It's a mind blower. If you get a chance to read this, it will help if you've been a believer for a number of years, but I don't think it's just limited to that, but
Mm-hmm.
incredible book. But, you know, I think that walking in what we've walked in through the church years, there was always this thing of, you know, poverty is almost good. And then, I read about the Good Samaritan picking the guy up off the road, being able to pay for his wounds. Clearly, this guy had a little bit of funding.
Mm-hmm.
And so many people have limit there. So that's probably why I work with the majority of people I'm working with being entrepreneurial, is they're looking for ways to create additional freedom and additional impact. And 300 grand goes a lot further than $300 in the donation plate, just
Mm-hmm.
to be clear. But there are people as well that I work with, guys who have money, who don't have the relational issues that the relational results that they'd really like to have, and the general life results that they'd like to have. There are a lot of unhappy people, regardless of how much they're making or what they're doing. And so those are the people I started working with. I signed an agreement with a publisher about a year ago, started writing a book. It's going to be coming out this year before the end of the year. It's called Daddy Issues.
Cool.
It's a interesting cover, and I'm sure it'll get me some great attention. Maybe for some people with some blue hair.
There you go.
But yeah, the podcast is going to be rolling out here in the next couple of weeks. Just shot an intro for it, and I'm going to be launching a podcast. I'll actually be having you on. And then also, I've got a men's group. I was running, short-term men's groups, like a 30-day level up period with groups of men. And then I just decided that I really need to do this on a regular basis. So I'm going to be having my own app that's being launched. We were aiming for August 1st. I'm actually thinking September 1st is when we're going to launch realistically, but it'll be a native iOS and Android app.
Awesome.
It's not like you're logging into Facebook and then joining a private group. It's literally, the app is my logo for my company, Freeman Forge, and you'll be able to log in there. And it's an entire group. I had a guy from Australia. I've got guys from South Africa coming. I got guys from all over the country joining. And so this is a large group of men. And I think what inspired that in going, I need to reach a larger group of men in a collective sense, was in 2020, all the loneliness that was created. I was going, who is with me here?
Yeah.
Who else is like me? Who else is going to say no? Who else is going to stand tall so I don't feel like I'm standing on this hill by myself? And so I will, traveling the country, I heard so many people go, who's going to do something? Oh, I don't know who's around me. I'm like, okay, well, do something then.
Yeah.
And so this is a big part of what that is. I want to be able to tie people together in a community that around the country, they can have meetups, they can connect together. We've got accountability processes there. We've got challenges there, networking, people hiring, people offering consulting services. So I'm looking at building an entire community there. Already got a great group of guys that are already in, very dangerous men who are free, who control their own destiny, who are making waves and achieving their dreams. So good group of people to be around.
Network of warriors.
Yeah, exactly. Very good resource there for men. So outside of that, I'm speaking at events. I've got a couple of events. I'm not speaking at an event this weekend. I'm at events all over the country. So if people for some reason wanted to follow me on Instagram, I think my handle is Forger of Men there. It's not my handle everywhere. Some places I'm Gabriel Alexander, other ones I'm Forger of Men. Mainly because if one was taken, I had to take the other. But I'm on Instagram, Facebook, Gab TV, YouTube. Not a ton of content on my channels as of yet, mainly because my channels got nuked for telling everybody the Rona was fake.
Oh, yeah. Good job.
And so I've got my band badge and building those things up. And then, of course, my website is just GabrielAlexander.co. And if somebody wants to reach out there, I've got a phone number there. People can text. That is me responding. I don't have somebody else responding to those text messages. So my phone number's there. You can text me, email me, get on the email list if you like. Connect with me. I'll be in Florida in October at 21 Summit. And then again, I'll be there at Full Spectrum Warrior Protector Summit in February, also in Florida, and any place in between. And of course, if anybody listening to this has men's events they're putting on, I'd be more than happy to contribute if I possibly can. So get a hold of me and let me know.
Awesome.
But as far as a vision for the future and where I want to take it is, I love the one-on-one coaching. The next thing that we're adding is in-person events that we're actually putting on ourselves. One thing that I am finding is that men are, again, like you said, obtaining a lot of information, but not putting it into practice.
Right.
So I'm bringing guys into rooms. Part of the time it's going to be like a business owners summit where we pull guys together and we actually lead them through kind of being forced to make some decisions they've been putting off for a good amount of time. But one of the other things that's being put together right now is 3 and 5 day events for men. So one of the big dreams of coming down to Texas, and one of the reasons I ended up in Texas, was to be able to get my hands on a big piece of land and to become independent. And so that's growing food, it's raising animals, it's having water, it's having places we can train, and it's a place where my kids can run, 100 acres without being touched by a weirdo. So
it's a homestead and a hub.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, it's the dream for a lot of people, but one of the things that I want to be able to do there is put on 3 to 5 day events for men where we come out, we're doing physical training, we're doing business training, relational stuff, and we're having a lot of fun out on the big property together. But I'm trying to put practical tools in men's hands from not only a physical preparedness perspective and being free and by being able to control your own food, water, and everything there, but men control their financial future on the business side. And there's nothing like making guys go without sleep for 24 hours and then putting them in a small office building with the heat up and forcing them to make decisions they've been unwilling to make for a couple of years.
I love it.
They'll do anything at that point.
Literally turn the heat up, man. You learn a lot about yourself when you're uncomfortable.
Yeah, absolutely. And so that's the dream. And I want to do it all over the country. I think like we had talked about, something that really resonated with me on our phone call the other day was there needs to be a uniting of the clans. I love the fact that the masculinity and men's coaching thing is becoming more of a movement. When I started doing this, I didn't even realize how many guys were even into it to begin with, because I wasn't inspired by anyone. I just knew I had to do it.
Exactly.
And so I began, and then I started realizing there's a number of these other guys, but they've all got their own individual enclaves. And I'm looking for a way to bring more and more cohesion and unity in it. And I think that's one of the big things that we watched, even with the whole election rolling out, is we all felt helpless. We all felt like we just witnessed what happened. We don't tell me that wasn't rigged. What do we do? And everyone's disjointed. There's no main form of communication. There's nobody talking and just going, I want to help create that as much as I possibly can.
Absolutely. That adhesiveness across, actually having a United States of America, to be united instead of, I mean, we live in a world of social media and, instant ability to communicate with one another. Yet we have such a division across the country that it's ridiculous. And if we could band together with the same mission, same mindset, then we can make a lot of waves and make a lot of progress and really begin to influence and lead our communities in the way that it should be led. And prayerfully, that's back towards God and, the direction morally that he has lined out for us from an external standpoint. And then also within our lifestyle as well, with our families and our children and our homesteads and our self-sustainability as well. I love that, man.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I think it's pointing back to it is, mentioning, I think it's great to mention the country. Don't get me wrong. I love my country. I love the idea of what America is. America, it's not even a country. It's an idea. It's something to ascribe to. And while I would love for patriotism to be a part of it, I'm not a doomer. I'm not a black pillar, but I also understand history and I see what is here. And I recognize that America is probably not long.
Yeah.
At least even then, it doesn't look like the America that I remember when I was young. And the older I get, the more clear it's becoming that it is truly a good and evil situation. This is not conservative and liberal.
Bigger.
This is good and evil. This is
That's
far
right.
bigger. And so the uniting that needs to take place must take place along a plumb line of truth. We began this conversation, you talking about the line of truth.
Mm-hmm.
And you cannot have people together calling one thing truth and the other thing truth. There is one truth that you have to adhere under. And if that doesn't align, and that's why we're seeing what we're seeing, is a throwing off of truth. It's throwing off of God. It's the throwing off of the Father. That's why we're saying that there's, police brutality targeted toward Black people. It's why we're hearing that women are paid less than men for the same job. It's why we're hearing that, men can be women and men can get pregnant. It's a throwing off of accountability so that anything can be called truth.
Yes.
Know that you didn't see that suitcase pulled out from underneath that table with a whole bunch of ballots that already got run through the machine twice. No, that's not what you saw.
Yeah.
If you can get a grown man to agree that dude can get pregnant, you can get that man to agree to anything that you say is true.
Exactly right.
And so this cannot come down to some flag, unfortunately. It has to come down to belief and the bedrock of everything that your life is built upon. And you need to be surrounding yourself with men like that. You need to be surrounding yourself with people that not only love God, but that want to reflect him in every single aspect. And that does mean from a warrior perspective.
What's so interesting, man, is that, and I don't mean to cut you off, but like most people who say, hey, I can't believe in a God that I can't see, but then they see things with their own eyes and don't believe it. I'm like, that you're really contradicting yourself. Do you believe in anything is what I want to know, or are you yoked so strongly to just wherever this ideology will take you that you're unwilling. You're that elephant that's staked in the ground. Somebody pick you up and just walk you anywhere.
It's rebellion.
100%.
And it's fatherlessness.
Mm-hmm.
There's not a father. There's not someone laying down the law. There's not someone establishing order. It's people that don't want to be told what to do. It's people that don't want to be told what to believe. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I mean, these people walking around even now wearing masks around in Texas, you'll see one person in the entire mall and take a sandwich and put it back up. There may be a couple of people that are that afraid, but I'll tell you right now, I bet my house and everything else that it ain't about that they're afraid. Yeah. It's that they're not willing to give up their pride. It's pride. My dad from the pulpit used to say it all the time. He said, you think that the Antichrist is something out there. He goes, it ain't. It's you. Mm-hmm. It's us. It's the flesh part of us that lives outside of Christ. It's the part of us that we hold on to that lifts its head up above God. You said it earlier. It's Babel or Babylon. Mm-hmm. The gathering of humans and the raising up of human ideas above the ideas and the authority of God always ends up in Babel.
That's right. Becoming your own God.
Yes. And really, that's what Satanism is. Satanism isn't even the worship of Satan. It's the worship of self.
That's right. Do what thou wilt.
Exactly. No, yeah. Satanists will tell you that. It is, it's the worship of self. That's all it is. It's whatever you want to believe, whatever you want. And what people are seeing right now is what has come from it. Mm-hmm. So we got to do something different.
That's right. So that's a call to action to anybody listening is, are we uncomfortable enough to stand up as men and make a decision to define what it is that we actually value in our life, in our relationships, in our businesses, on a personal standpoint and from the community around you? What are you willing to stand up for? Do you know what you even stand up for? And if not, have a conversation with somebody, with the right people that is going to not just tell you what you need to hear, not just make you feel good about yourself, or kind of beat around the bush just so that they look like a good friend and a compassionate person. Find somebody that is going to tell you what you need to do, not just what you need to hear. Who am I? How do you see me? How do you perceive me? Is my marriage, like most men think that they're doing great as a father and a husband and all of that. But once you get around people that are actually walking in authority and leadership, you realize, hey man, maybe I'm not doing this whole father thing or husband thing right. and most people get jealous, they get insecure, but all that conviction is an opportunity to change, right? So I believe there's two different things. There's conviction and there's condemnation. Condemnation says, this is who you are. You're a piece of trash. You're weak, and that's who you are. But conviction says, listen, you're going the wrong way. Yes, you're sinning. Yes, you are, eating crap food, not caring about your health, beating your wife, hating, being rude to your kids or whatever. Yes, you're doing all of those things, but you have an opportunity. There's hope attached to conviction. And so what is it that you are hoping in? Do you want to be a better person? Because you are able to be. And it doesn't matter what anybody else says. You do not need the approval of anybody else in your life for you to be who you are supposed to be.
Yes.
Stop thinking about what everybody else thinks of you and start using those critiques to decide whether or not you are okay with being that person.
100%, man. I said that to my wife yesterday because I said, for the first 20 years of my life, I really, my entire life was controlled by other people, by me taking what they had to say, feeling bad about it, and changing the way I live.
Mm-hmm.
When people realize real quick, it's like they crucified Jesus. The Son of God, God come in the flesh, and the pastors crucified him.
Mm-hmm.
The pastors, the priests of the day, crucified him. We think about the priests as some like evil dudes. These were the pastors. These were the people who were religious.
Right. And how deceived do you have to be to not see Christ right in front of your eyes? That's pride.
It shows you how prideful even people of faith can be.
Yeah.
And when I started getting it through my head that the only one that matters is Christ. The only one that matters is God's opinion of me.
Mm-hmm.
And, I'm sure they looked at King David he was pretty crazy a couple times. And anybody who did anything great. But I think it's like, those are the people worth reading about too.
Mm-hmm.
What do you want your life to look like? Do you want what stories do you want told?
Mm-hmm.
Like I think about I'm not blessed enough to have a son, but I think about what if when my son is 10 years old, I passed or something, what would the stories that men would tell about my life to him?
Yes, absolutely.
I live something like that. And I would just encourage people to throw off fear, to throw off what other people say, throw off what other people think, including religious influences, and listen to God first and foremost.
That's right.
Not saying that you can't get wisdom from people who you trust. And it's not to say that no one has anything good to say, but you need to hear from God.
Mm-hmm.
A pastor can't hear from God for you. A prophet can't hear from God for you necessarily. You need to learn to hear from God for you. And stand tall. Say what you believe in. Don't bow for nobody. Not bow to the mob. Do not apologize. Stand firm. Be legendary.
That's it. That's it, man. Well, thank you so much, man. I think that's probably a good ending point for us. We could probably go on for another 2 hours. That's something I learned.
Let's do another one. Let's do part 2 because
we'll do it.
And then we haven't talked about like the teen years. We got to go on for days here.
Yeah. Did so much content through experience, dude. For real. I feel like there's tons of value that we were kind of placed together on purpose and found one another on purpose. And I'm really looking forward to seeing what the future looks like for me and you and the impact that I believe God is going to bring through us. So thanks for joining the podcast, man. And everybody, make sure to take a look in the description. I'll have all of his links, all of my links in there as well to anything that we might have mentioned during this podcast. Man, I'm just so thankful for you. I hope you have an awesome day, dude. And y'all make sure to engage. Let us know how you are dealing with masculinity, with fatherhood, with being a husband, a man of God, whatever that is. Let's talk about it. Let's get engaged with one another. Don't just listen to the value. Attain it and use it in your everyday life and try to make a difference the best you can. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So I love you guys. I'm praying for every single one of you. I look forward to locking shields with you. And man, y'all have an awesome day. Keep roaring.